Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Data Engineering Show. I'm Boaz. I'm be here alone today without Eldad. But with me is Jonathan Palmer. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing?
Very good. Jonathan is the VP of Data Platform at Scopely. Scopely, if you don't know, is a gaming company, a mobile-first gaming company. They did games like The Walking Dead and Scrabble Go, Looney Tunes World of Mayhem, and many others. Prior to that, Jonathan was head of BI at Go Cardless. Before that, he also spent more years in gaming at King. And in his background combines both business intelligence and data engineering. Jonathan, what did I miss about your background that is important to mention? Or did I get it right?
I think you got it pretty much spot on.
Awesome. So tell us, what do you do at Scopely?
So I work for a part of Scopely called PlayGaming. PlayGaming is the platform that powers our games, including their analytics capabilities, but enables them to do everything from building the game, provisioning infrastructure, to experimentation, to CRM, push messaging campaigns, and everything in between. Most of which are powered by data in one form or another. So it's my job to kind of manage the strategy for how that data platform scales and grows and powers all the games. The tech vendors we work with, the people we hire, the products, ideas that we have one way or another. That's my job to make sure that all kind of works together.
So when we say platform in the context of what you do, it's essentially the data platform or the entire platform on top of which the games run.
So my bit is the data platform, but sits within the entire platform on which the games run.
And so you mentioned we see behind you in the background the PlayGaming subbrand. So tell us a little bit about that. Are you guys positioning this as something to become a publicly outbound kind of name for the data platform? What's the story of PlayGaming under Scopely?
So PlayGaming is it's an internal brand at this point, but it's as we Scopely works with we have our organic titles, the ones that are built by Scopely Studios, but we also publish games from third parties, and we also have kind of acquired a few businesses over recent years, like Fox Next with Marvel Strike Force and GSM Games just recently. So PlayGaming in some ways is part of the kind of the offering and the value proposition of Scopely. It's it's a super cool platform that enables you to manage the full life cycle of your game, and data is kind of the lifeblood of that.
Okay, so I'd love to spend more time on that. Before that, walk us a little bit through your background. You did an interesting journey. You started from more on the business intelligence side, then touched many things. Ended up now being sort of VP of platform. Walk us through your journey.
I had a strange start. So I actually studied ancient history. So I had a kind of zero tech background.
So you studied Hadoop.
Yes, exactly. No, Microsoft Access. So it's I started out. I got my kind of break in tech from a company called Spark Data in Bristol in the UK, who kind of deliberately employ people from non-tech backgrounds and teach them how to be software engineers. And I was working on data-driven systems. That's where I learned SQL. And over a variety of years, I got closer and closer to the data side. And then the kind of inflection point, I guess, was when I joined King, as you mentioned. Then I was a ClickView developer, but I became more and more interested in the life cycle of data, how it works in enormous, complex, like fast-paced businesses, like in gaming. And that took me into kind of roles like principal engineer and product manager and then director of data analytics. So more and more thinking about the strategy and how all of this tech fits together with ultimately what the business is trying to do.
That's amazing. You don't meet many data / historians like yourself.
No, there weren't many jobs in ancient Rome to go to, so I went down a different path.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing you hear about, companies or people trying to encourage each other. Let's give a shot to people who don't come directly from tech or from engineering education to take on these positions. But the truth of the matter is that it remains very rare still. So very interesting to hear, and it has worked out amazingly well for you. I wish we would see that more often.
Yeah, it's an interesting model. It definitely gives a high level of imposter syndrome, though. I can tell you that.
I'm sure it does. So at Scopely, let's dive into sort of the platform, which is super interesting. Before that, how many employees does Scopely have worldwide, and how big are the data-related teams?
So Scopely is growing super fast. So by the time I say a number, it's probably already out of date. But last time I looked, it's like about 1,700 people in 17 markets all over the UK, everywhere from LA to Dublin, London, and Barcelona, where I am. And the data part of that, I would say, is roughly between 60 and 70 people in data-related roles. That covers data infrastructure team, data applications, core BI, data science, and we also embed mini data teams of product analysts and analytics engineers into games and verticals as well. So across all of that organization, it's about 60 to 70 people.
And PlayGaming, as the platform you described, was that something that is that a new initiative? Was that from the outset?
No, so I mean, every game requires a platform to run on it. So the platform itself is, I guess, as old as Scopely, but over the last couple of years, we've really refined how we think about that platform, and increasingly sort of delivering more and more kind of competitive differentiating features and so on, and it's becoming a stronger and stronger brand kind of, within Scopely itself.
So when did the PlayGaming brand sort of launch?
I think around about in the last 12 to 18 months, I'd say.
Got it. So what does the data stack look like?
So we are in the final stages of moving from our legacy stack to our current stack. I mean, our future-proof stack, so to speak, is principally BigQuery, DBT for the ELT with Airflow orchestrating DBT jobs, and then the main kind of user touch point is Looker. But we actually ingest data originally as Parquet files into S3 on AWS, and then ship everything across on a kind of micro batch basis over to BigQuery.
What does the legacy stack look like?
So before we made this change, that data is ingested, the raw events are ingested into S3, and then we used EMR, and we kind of manage Spark and Impala ourselves on AWS infrastructure for ETL, and also for kind of users querying the data directly. And then the principal means of access was Tableau. Okay,
so Tableau on the old stack, Looker on the new one.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And what was the tipping point? Can you describe the moment in time where the company decided we have to start looking for or build out a new stack because this one doesn't cut it anymore?
So I joined Scopely a couple of years ago. And when I joined, it was one of the first things I did was to kind of look around and see, okay, how is everything scaling, both in terms of the data warehouse, the computational workloads, but also user experience. And the team had done a super good job of kind of running this Spark and Impala setup on S3, but we were seeing kind of fairly growing number of outages, and one of my kind of North Stars, especially as we'd already made the decision, Scopely had made the decision before I joined to move towards Looker. Average query duration in Looker is one of my kind of North Star metrics. And when we started off, it was around 5 minutes using our Spark infrastructure, which is clearly not what the user wants. And moving to BigQuery, we've now got that to 30 seconds. And in terms of the actual sort of distribution of that, like most of our queries are in single figures.
So, you guys having been in an AWS shop, I'm sure making the decision to go into the GCP direction wasn't an easy one. Tell us a little bit about that, the decision process there, and then deciding to go for it. Yeah,
so I think I don't think it was too controversial. I think Scopely had ambitions for a while to kind of consider a multi-cloud approach, and this was one of the more obvious opportunities to do that. I'd worked with the Google stack in King and Go Cardless, so I already rated it pretty highly. But fundamentally, we went through a sort of a super rigorous market search. We looked at all of the big players, Databricks, Snowflake, as well, and Redshift, and we put them all through their paces based on our particular use case. And at the end of that evaluation process, there was kind of a clear winner across a variety of dimensions, not just speed, but scalability, cost efficiency. A big one for me is kind of barrier to entry. So, if Spark is super powerful, but it's quite hard to hire people who straight away get Spark and can be effective in that world. Whereas the barrier to entry, I think, with BigQuery is a lot lower.
So the intention, though, is to stay multi-cloud and keep using both?
Yeah, I mean, Scopely leverages AWS for all sorts of parts of the gaming side of the infrastructure and does it extremely well. So, at the moment, I think we've got a good balance between using the strengths of the various platforms in the right place.
Another interesting thing with the migration, the move from Tableau to Looker, oftentimes, we see people, it's not that they have anything against moving out of Tableau, but the sheer amount of reports that already exist make it tough for people to agree on at the end of the day moving to a new tool. How did you go about that? Is there like a process of recreating, or are you saying new ones in the new platform, old ones stay in Tableau?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think for me it was really non-controversial because the sheer number of Tableau reports was one of the main reasons to move. I think we deprecated somewhere between 80 and 90% of all the Tableau dashboards created in Scopely's history as part of the move to Looker. There was a huge amount of debt in there that was not being used. That was basically creates confusion. That sort of single source of truth becomes impossible. So it was a very compelling reason to kind of tear it up and start again.
It's like moving apartments. You start going drawer by drawer.
Exactly. It's the housekeeping.
The trash bin there, and then what goes into the trash and what stays in the drawers.
Exactly. Everybody talks about spring cleaning, but rarely gets around to doing it. So it's the best opportunity to do that.
I think, it takes courage too. Like, at the end of the day, deprecating 80%, 90%, many companies, it takes courage to some extent, even though it might be the completely rational thing to do and the correct thing to do. I feel many companies, or many people, get emotionally attached to so much work hours behind those dashboards. Throwing them out oftentimes makes people feel, so what did I do that for?
That's true. I would say it's like courage and naivety, but in our case, we had a relatively new team, and I think a pretty clear sense that the way we were operating was not going to scale for a Scopely that's 10x what it was then. So we had to do something, and the value of Looker in that was really clear to the team, I think.
From a skill set perspective, how did you go about that? I mean, did you guys need to hire a lot of new people, or were you able to, use the same people who were in charge of the existing stack, sort of take over and also move to the new one happily?
Well, we've been hiring rapidly anyway, so it's a kind of mixture of both. But all the people who are working on that old stack have transitioned pretty seamlessly and actually really impressively to the new stack. I put a lot of time and effort personally in that beginning stage of the sort of evangelization, education piece, so that when people started working it, they could operate pretty autonomously. Because just having me as the only person who knows how to Looker in a large organization is obviously not very scalable. So distributing that knowledge super fast, but also getting that sort of buy-in and that feeling of like, okay, this is actually going to make our lives better, and we want to learn and we want to adapt to this. So generally that went pretty well, and people have grabbed it and really embraced the opportunity. And when it comes to hiring, if you only target people who are working with your stack, that technology is already, like, your target addressable market is super small even today. So generally we're looking for different attitudes and abilities. We're not restricting it just to people who worked on that.
What data volumes are you guys dealing with? So, for example, in BigQuery, how much data are we looking at?
I believe there's about 5.5 petabytes, and we ingest somewhere between like 12 and 15 billion events a day. And then in terms of kind of consumption, we've got about 1,500 Looker users, and they're running about 40,000 queries a day on top of that data in one from another.
Wow, that's impressive. And so what kinds of use cases, are running on top of the platform,
So a variety of things. So like the most kind of digestible of which is the sort of portfolio reporting. So the North Star KPIs that the whole business uses to understand retention, engagement, acquisition, monetization are kind of, the default standard of this is how these are the gold standard measurements of those things. Then there's this kind of deep dive analysis in the games themselves, looking at live ops performance, level progression, characters, battles, depending on the genre. We have user acquisition and ads use cases. So whether it's kind of managing the sort of budget allocation with UA campaigns, or actually, we're also powering the forwarding of events onto UA networks and things like that.
So, for example, let me stop you right here for a second. So across these three use cases, for example, how are the people split? Are we talking about analysts embedded in the respective departments? Are we talking about, and then sort of joint horizontal data engineering that takes care of BigQuery under the hood? Walk us sort of through the human structure.
God, yes. So our sort of centralized structure is around the data infrastructure and, fundamentally running the platforms that power the ingestion, that power, how we think about the relationship between AWS and GCP. Then there's the core BI team. Their job is to build those kind of baseline abstractions, those things that power those portfolio KPIs, for example, but also the kind of building blocks that other people can extend, like our core Looker explores and things like that. The responsibility of that team.
So, for example, if one of the North Star KPIs, you want to introduce a new one, which people are involved? Who's the analyst that defines the KPI? So, and where does he or she sit?
So we fundamentally, the engineering will be done by the core BI team, and their guidance of that team comes from the product manager of that team, and they partner really closely with this kind of strategic analytics organization, which actually isn't a part of my organization. It's part of the commercial side of the business. And their job, part of what they do is thinking about how do we think about what success looks like Scopely, and how do we measure that? And so typically it'll be them that's driving that KPI. For example, at the moment, we're working on bringing kind of a better lens to reactivation of players. So they're the ones thinking about the definition of that. And then my core BI team will actually be the ones who go and build that.
Amazing. And so in the core BI team, there's both data engineering skill sets and BI skill sets?
Yeah. And like all the technical roles generally called analytics engineers, and in line with that kind of move towards people who can move pretty seamlessly between writing, building data models or writing LookML and constructing Looker products. So clearly people have different specializations, but our mission is to have people who are pretty able to move across the three, like DBT.
Okay, so it's not like, person A stops at BigQuery and person B starts at Looker. You have the same people who could do both.
Yeah, and like we've come from that model where it was more of a kind of relay handover, and more trying to bring it together. So there's greater diversity across them.
Interesting. So what? So do you consider the transition over? Is it done? Is it still in progress? How much is left?
So the sort of backbone of the transition is done. So from the moment we sort of signed the deal with Google to kind of first business value was 3 months. So we sort of worked backwards through the migration. So we moved all of our self-serve workloads, whether that was Tableau dashboards that still existed at that point, Looker, or direct SQL query access. All of that happened first so that we could take the pressure off teams kind of keeping the lights on the old stack and deliver value as early as possible relative to when the meter started running. And then we worked back upstream through ETL. So all of our ETL, whether it's kind of game specific or the core side of things, that was all migrated in less than 12 months. We've deprecated pretty much all of the AWS side of things. And the only thing I would say, it's not so much related to migration, but the thing we're working on now is now streaming ingestion directly into BigQuery so that the data is as fresh as possible and as fast as possible.
What other new initiatives are lined up? Sort of, where do you want to see Scopely and the platform, a year from now?
So we've got a couple of big focuses, but I think one of the first ones at this point, like I'm super happy with the scalability of our platform. Like it does what it needs to do. It'll scale naturally as Scopely grows, and we add more and more use cases, more games, more studios, more data. Now focus now is kind of on quality and observability. So we can do great things with the data, but we rely heavily on that data being clean, and fundamentally that comes a lot down to the sort of tracking side of things. And at the moment, it's pretty easy for a game to implement their tracking completely incorrectly, and then we'll throw analytics engineers at the problem to kind of tidy it all up and get into the shape we need it. So we're going kind of upstream now and looking at the way we do tracking, whether it's the semantics or the kind of the tooling that we give to game teams to help with that, so they can get it easily right, like first time. And the kind of time to insight, which is kind of another of my North Star metrics, is as quick as possible.
But how are you literally doing that? Are you using any tools, libraries, and these new approaches? How are you going about that change?
So some of it's about education and process. Some of it's about building tooling. So, for example, with that, focusing on a sort of streaming ingestion into BigQuery, the faster that data is available in BigQuery, the more we can leverage tools like Looker to enable people to QA and inspect their events using the same business logic. Before it was a bit like, if you want to see the raw event real time here, you can. But if you want kind of basic business logic as well that's batch, that's over here. We're bringing those two worlds together. But we're also looking at, we've had conversations with a variety of vendors in the space over the year. No decisions have been made, but I think there's interesting companies like Monte Carlo, Avo, and Iteratively who between them are attacking this thing from a different angle, either looking at how commoditizing how companies build tracking plans and making that super easy rather than having to build that yourself, or the Monte Carlo side, that observability piece that plugs into your existing stack. So all of these things are kind of we're looking at them and working out where the kind of build versus buy trade-off is and what it is that's the kind of Scopely singularity about the problem.
Yeah, I mean, definitely looking into quality observability is taking the data engineering world by storm, so to say, with vendors like Monte Carlo, Databand, many others. It'll be interesting to follow how that plays out and who sort of will stay on top. But most importantly, that really seeing everybody adopting these processes and mindsets. Because at the end of the day, it's really something that can make a difference. So much time wasted by figuring things out downstream when they're wrong. It's a natural next step for our market, I guess.
Absolutely, and it's great to see, and it's interesting. Working with software engineers, I noticed that when they were talking about observability of platforms, 3 to 5 years ago, and then you start to see the same thing crop up in data engineering shortly afterwards. I think there's this kind of virtuous cycle of these patterns that come over from software engineering and get applied to data engineering to our use cases as well.
What about data science? Is there a dedicated data science department? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have a data science department. They work principally on our kind of predictive offering of the platform. So they using machine learning, mainly working with Dataproc on GCP to do things like LTV predictions, churn predictions. But we're moving more and more to a world where we don't just kind of predict what's going to happen, but prescribing what would be the best course of action to avoid the negative outcome as well.
Mm-hmm. And how big is that?
How big is that? Data science team is relatively small. It's like less than 10 people. but working with software engineers and certain product designers around them to build these products.
All in all, there's you mentioned there are around 60 people dealing with data, I guess. What sort of processes are in place, I guess, sort of to stay horizontally aligned? Is there sort of a weekly guild meeting or anything like that? Sort of how do you make sure everybody knows what's happening around and with data?
Yeah, so with these kind of embedded teams, we have a matrix management structure. So they both report into the games, for example, so that they have their kind of, their direction is coming mainly from the roadmap of the games. And then the horizontal management is kind of looking at that and making sure we move in a consistent and coherent kind of way. There are always challenges when you've got kind of two dimensions competing, but by and large, I think we've done a pretty good job of, especially with things like the BigQuery migration, for example, like coordinating that across multiple embedded teams and doing it in a consistent way. Kind of definitely stress tested that organization, and the outcome has been pretty good, I would say.
And so, you specifically, how does your direct team look like in the platform?
So typically I have a few directors who report into me, both those kind of horizontal leads that we're talking about, or directors of analytics engineering working in core BI, for example, and the leadership of the data infrastructure team. Plus I have a group of product managers who report to me, who cover a variety of things from, core data products to data applications, going back to that point about the PlayGaming platform. The most visible product of the PlayGaming platform is console, which is the PlayGaming console, which is fundamentally the UI that you go to work with everything that a game team needs. So how we embed data applications capabilities into that's also got a product focus as well.
So within that journey from Scopelys in the last 2 years, maybe specifically with the GCP move or in general, what in retrospect, if you rewind, would you have avoided? Sort of what would you do a little bit differently to make it even smoother?
Great question. Well, I think one thing was when we were migrating, whether we were doing moving things like Tableau dashboards and Looker products, or game-specific data pipelines or core data pipelines, that created bottlenecks around and pressure on different profiles and parts of the team, which obviously had a knock. If you're someone who's migrating your ETL is not building the things you need to leverage in Looker, that obviously affects roadmaps. I mean, by and large, I think we got the balance okay, but one of the big drivers for why we're moving to this analytics engineering mindset and having people who can kind of traverse the whole stack more easily is to avoid that. I don't intend to migrate data warehouses every couple of years, but it really brought home that point around bottlenecks and kind of linear dependencies and making sure. So if I could do it again, it would have been, I'm not sure the circumstances were there to do it, but it would have been great to kind of get that analytics engineering thing first and then the stack second. But that's also an argument that's a bit the sort of tail wagging the dog.
You mentioned you had been using the Google at King as well, and in between a few years passed, and then you took on Google again at Scopely. How did you feel the platform's improvement over those years? What's better at the GCP stack today versus when you were still at King?
One of the big things, I guess, is when I was still at King, Looker was still its own independent company, and so I wasn't super surprised when the acquisition happened. But you can really see now, I think, how the two, those things are converging and complementing each other. I'd say there's also been progress made in a bunch of different areas. Just the simple things like the BigQuery UI and how easy that is to work within, but also some of the things under the hood around security and privacy permissions. All of these things have come on some since I first started playing around with BigQuery. What must have been a good 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah. Okay. This has been super, super interesting, Jonathan. I can't thank you enough. maybe a good note to finish with would be, what advice would you have for people like yourself who are not educated with a technical background and are considering a move into tech?
Great question. I think, well, one thing I think is super cool now, which didn't happen so much at the start of my career, but you have so many bootcamp companies now who can help accelerate that and take different views on the problem. Both, organizations like Codop, for example, who working with women and underrepresented minorities. There are so many doors that are opening now. So I think that's one avenue. The other thing I would say is aiming at companies that use the modern data stack. They use tools like dbt, Looker, and BigQuery or Snowflake, for example, and they tend to be startups, and those companies tend to move super fast, super agile. Like in my experience, someone at the start of their career can learn more in a year working in that sort of environment than they can 5 years working in a sort of big monolithic legacy organization. So I would aim for those roles, and they also tend to be much more kind of open-minded about skill set, I think, in their hiring as well.
Amazing. Great piece of advice. I wish I could go back in time, study history, and take your advice.
It was all by accident rather than by design. So but it's worked out okay.
Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thanks
see
for having
you
me.
around. Thank you for listening, everybody. Bye-bye. So we've launched just a few months ago. We're growing quite nicely, right?
Yes.
How many views do we have?
Very happy.
I think we've got like 200,000, right?
Happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, not bad. But we want more. If you
More.
like this, help us spread the love.
Yes.
If you don't like that, spread,
Vote for replacing me for someone else. That's fine.
And, we promise to try our best to keep bringing
You're
you
amazing, boss.
the data people from the most interesting data companies. So subscribe, make our mama proud, help us out.
Love you, mom.